Hey everybody, Jason here from Iridio, and I've got Tyler here from Portrait Displays. Today's webinar session, we're going to be doing a continuation of our first session, which was Introduction to CalMAN. If you guys did not catch that first session, no big deal. We're just going to kind of continue on here. It is posted up on YouTube, on the Iridio YouTube page, so feel free to go back and take a look at the part one anytime you'd like to. Today we're going to get a little bit deeper into CalMAN and look at some of the more customizable type of things. And I think Tyler may have a little surprise towards the end that we might talk about something very special that might be happening in the next few days or a couple weeks maybe. So that being said, hey Tyler, how's it going?
Hey Jason, how's it going?
I am good, man. Just a much nicer day here in Florida. It's been rainy and cloudy for the past couple days, so it's at least nice to see some sun. How's everything on your end?
It just rained for the first time in like a week and a half or 2 weeks.
Oh yeah, that's good. That's good. Well, cool. So thanks so much for being here. As I said before, we had a great session last time. We left off talking about doing some profiling work and just looking at the different workflows and stuff. So again, guys, today is going to be sort of a continuation on that. So with that being said, Tyler, is there anywhere specific you want to start? Actually, before we do that, let's just let everybody know the setup we're using here. Behind me, as you can see, is a LG 55 C7 OLED. We're going to be using the Iridio 6G test pattern generator. I've also got my Klein K10 colorimeter up and running on the screen now. And what you guys may see right now that you did not see before was my my Jetty 1511. The last session that we did with Tyler, the Jetty was off in Germany, actually being recalibrated. So I just got it back. It's got a fresh calibration on it. Last time we did this, I profiled the Klein with an i1 Pro 2, so I went ahead and redid that this morning with the Jetty. So that's a little bit about the setup that we have going on. And actually, we already have a question in. Chris says, oh, he saw it. Okay, yeah. Hey, Chris. Hey, Sylvan. Sylvan and Chris are saying hi to us, Tyler. So, hey, guys. Thank you so much for being here. So, Tyler, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here so we can see. And we should have CalMAN up on the screen right now.
Yep.
And I'm going to give you the control of the mouse. And you should have control over the system now. Let me actually minimize this window real quick. And boom, there you go.
Okay, just slight lag. Okay, so today we're gonna cover some more advanced CalMAN topics. Now, if you still need to check out the basics, you can watch the other webinar on YouTube like Jason mentioned, but we're just gonna kind of dive in and assume that you guys have already seen that one. So the first thing I'm going to go through is something called our SDR toolkit, and it's really not made to do calibrations per se. A lot of people can use it for that, but it's more for measurements and stuff. But it has all the different types of measurements you can do. So I want to show you some more advanced things you can do with it and ways you can customize things like the set of grayscale points or even create your own patch sets. So I'm going to go up to the CalMAN menu and go to Open Workflow Template, Analysis, and then SDR Toolkit. Now it loads and it drops you into a menu where it's like, what do you want to do? Because it's expecting you to know what type of measurements you want to take right now. So I'm actually going to go to the grayscale multipoint and click on this button, and it'll jump right to the page. Now you can navigate over using this side menu. We call this side menu the tree, or I just kind of call it it's kind of like a table of contents. So you can hide it, or you can unpin it right here, and it will be not locked open, and then you can go like that to hide it. Some people prefer it to be out all the time, whereas you can pin it, and then it will rescale CalMAN's UI to fill up the whole, so you can see everything with it pinned open. So those are some of the things that you can change depending on your own preference. So our grayscale multipoint layout, it's by default, it's set up to read 21 points of grayscale. But if we go into our workflow basic option setting here, we can go down and we can select different sets of grayscale points. And we have a lot of pre-selected ones, but what I really wanted to show you guys is, hey, you can edit your own and create your own. So if there's a set in here that you don't want, or there's something in here that doesn't cover your needs, like for example, if you wanted to do every single 8-bit value. Now we have one set up for full range, but not for limited range. So you could set up one that went from 16 to 235 or 255 with every 8-bit code value, and you could read every single grayscale point in 8-bit land. So that's one thing you can do. So let me go to, hopefully we don't run into anything in Jason's program files, but let me see why it's not opening.
And guys, why Tyler's looking for that, just keep in mind too, and don't be shy, there's a question box here throughout the webinar. So if you have any questions specifically for Tyler or myself, feel free to type those questions in the question box. I can see them. I've got them on my other screen here. So feel free to type those in and we will address those as we go along here as well.
So Jason, can you go into program files 86 and go to SpectraCal folder and then the CalMAN folder?
So I've got my SpectraCal folder. I'm going to pull it over here so you can see it, okay?
Okay.
There you go.
Okay,
and you still should have the keyboard and mouse. Yes, you do. Okay.
Okay. So actually, this is the documents one. Can we go to the?
Yeah.
I guess I could browse.
Yeah, if you want to, can you grab that? There you go. Perfect. So what I think you're doing here, Tyler, and tell me if I'm wrong here, you're going to find the folder where those things live, and you're probably just going to make a new folder with whatever values you want, right?
Yeah. So if we go to open CalMAN levels editor. Did it open on the other screen?
Give me a second. Let me grab the mouse from you. And
okay, I see it. It's open now.
Okay, there you go. Is it this one, or is it?
It's right down in the dock down here. You can see, or in your. Okay,
here, right
so
there.
Here's the levels editor. So by default, we can see the ones that's built in, or we can say, hey, I want to add a new levels family, and we can name it like webinar test. And we can define these as percentages or 8-bit video levels. So if we wanted 8-bit video levels, we could say, okay, I want 16, which is black. I want, and then you do a comma, space, 17, 18, 19, 2, 3, 5. And so if we wanted to save that, so we'd measure the first couple patches right out of black and then white. So if we save that, okay, so we can close out of this and now go back to CalMAN. Now we should be able to go into CalMAN, and down at the bottom there will be a new set. Hold on. Hold on, we might need to close CalMAN and reopen it. If that's going to be.
Yeah, that's okay. We can do that. There's a couple questions here we can jump into if you want to do that.
Sure.
Fabio says I should put a black patch on the OLED. Fabio, yeah, you might be right. I do have it in dark mode right now, and the OLED light is cranked kind of down. It might just look a little more exposed in the little webcam I'm using here. But good call though. That's a great call. If you're going to have a test pattern on the screen for a long amount of time, you might want to consider going a little darker, things like that. I do this a lot myself, actually. If I'm listening to music and I've got an album title and album artwork up on the screen, I'll turn down the contrast and the OLED light down really low. But good call, Fabio. Chris says, is there a projector database for vendor information about the gain and offset controls for each model? Chris, I have not seen anything like that in a while. A lot of that is just kind of tribal knowledge, if you will. But if you run into one that you're not sure of, if you want to reach out to me or a few different folks out there that probably have a lot of that stuff memorized, to be honest with you. Also, too, guys, we have that CalMAN users group on Facebook. If you guys aren't part of that and you want to be, feel free to search for it, and Tyler and I can admit you there, and you guys can share some knowledge and share some stuff like that as well there. There used to be, way back in the day, there used to be some ISF like forums. It was part of the old Sencor forums. But that stuff went away years ago. But that was all really, really old information at this point anyway. So, Chris, if you encounter one that you're not sure of, just feel free to reach out, and we'll find that information for you, no problem.
Yeah. So it seems like every manufacturer wants to name stuff differently, and everybody thinks that their naming convention is the correct one. So
yeah. Yeah, we've seen over the years many different things, gain and bias, low and high, which I think low and high is probably what I think would be the easiest. But I've said this many times over the years, if we could just get all the manufacturers in a room together to agree on what to call settings, we would be in a lot better shape. But unfortunately, that's never going to happen. So we just have to kind of pass that knowledge on and share it with each other. Cool. Now the meter and the generator reconnected on the CalMAN launch, so that's good.
Just going to check for new points through there.
There it is.
Yes.
Yep. So you had to put in the levels that you wanted, then close CalMAN and open it back up for those.
Yeah, and usually what I do is close CalMAN, launch it, because it essentially adds more data to the CalMAN configuration files, and CalMAN isn't real time polling those for changes.
Right.
So now if we wanted, we're in our multi-point grayscale again. So now if we wanted our new set of points, we would go down to grayscale points and go down to our webinar test. And now we have the exact points that we added. So this allows you to, especially once you get more experience with calibration, there's certain things that we just don't have in the factory workflows because they're more specialized. And a lot of times our users want to do some pretty advanced things, and this allows them to kind of make CalMAN behave exactly like they would like, and set up things exactly for the data that they would like to see. So now that we've shown you can do that, we can also have the same concept for color checker patch sets. So by default, we have the X-Rite Pantone color checker classic patches that they have given us the XYZ targets to, but you can create your own in a similar fashion. Now, I'll just show you how that works, but we don't actually need to, show them being applied again. But I'll go back to the same folder, and in this case, there's one called Custom Color Set Editor. And you might need to bring it in from the other.
Sure.
It takes a second to launch.
Now this would be good. Like I could think of situations, Tyler, where maybe you work for like a car manufacturer, and you have to have these very specific patches made up because you need to do things like read colors of the interior or the tail lights or things like that might be in your graphics or in your marketing materials.
Yeah. So for example, here is like the SG flesh tones that are normalized XYZ values, but you could say, okay, let's add a new color set. We can do another one.
While you're doing that, Alexi says, what's that Facebook group called again? Alexi, it's a CalMAN users group? Or CalMAN users. Yeah, so feel free to do a search, and it's going to ask you a couple of questions just to make sure you're a real person and not a bot. And then once you answer those questions, I think it kicks back to me and you, Tyler, right? And then we just let you in and go from there. Yep.
Yeah. Just make sure that you don't look like somebody signed up for Facebook 2 days ago. And so it allows you to enter values as a color checker set in different ways. So you can enter them in percentages or 8-bit values, or you can actually enter them as XYY values or XYZ normalized values. So it's pretty powerful. It allows you to create your own. Now, for example, this is how I made the color match HDR patch set. I worked with streaming provider that had real HDR demo content that they used to evaluate displays, and they told me in each scene what they looked at, which colors they looked at, whether it be skin tones or the color of this car or the blue of this light, and then I put all of those colors in a patch set, and that's what our color checker or the color match HDR patch set is. So it was based on real content, but I used this exact tool to do it. So you can do something similar. So if you had some demo content that you have, you could figure out what the RGB values are of those colors and enter them as a custom patch set. Or you could even do a whole bunch of weird stuff. You could add, and I think you can add about 1,000 or something.
Oh wow!
after that, it gets a little tedious. Even doing that many, you're entering 3,000 values. The one interesting fact is that the file that it writes to, it's stored in program data, and it's an unencrypted XML file. So it might be actually faster for you to make an example one on the screen with a few colors, open that XML file, and do some entering there instead of in this tool.
Sure.
So maybe we'll we'll put some links in the Facebook group showing where you can find that.
Cool.
It's in program data. It's in a hidden folder in Windows, but it's easy to get to.
Yeah, I like on the regular color checker that it concentrates so much in that in between area between red and green where a lot of the skin tones live.
Yep. So, and also with regards to the color checker, we also have one called Color Checker SG. So if I come here and uncheck Color Checker Classic and then check Color Checker SG, it's a much more detailed, I think it's 104 different patches versus the 24 of the classic color checker set.
Oh wow, way more, yeah.
You can see it's a much more detailed view, and I usually use this after for calibration testing, for testing accuracy and stuff, along with visual patterns.
Sure.
One thing you can do also is export data. So this is only in the professional versions of CalMAN, but a lot of people, they want to do stuff with measurement data, but it's not the easiest thing to do an automated way to gather data. And CalMAN makes that really easy, even if you don't want to use CalMAN to process the data. So a lot of people in R&D and at TV manufacturers will actually run measurement patches with CalMAN and then export the data as a CSV or Excel file and bring that into something like MATLAB or Excel, and they can take and compare to other data sets that they already have, like say they're doing an A/B testing on firmware updates and stuff like that. So the way that works is on any page, and remember this is only for the professional versions, this does not apply to the home version, but any page that has a set of data, so for example, the color checker page has color checker data, you right click on the history tab up here and go to export data. Now, this looks a little overwhelming, but I'll talk you through it. So we have some options on the left. This is the format of the export. So you have the option of Excel or CSV, and then you can have the data points as columns or rows, depending on how you want it. And you can have it like semicolon delimited or tabbed or comma. Also, you pick exactly what data. Now, this is the important part is this is a color checker page. So I need to uncheck grayscale and gamut and select color checker. And then I can select what data I want. Now, by default, we dump everything, which is like every single delta E formula at the same time.
Oh, wow.
So, but a lot of people, they'll figure out, okay, this is exactly what I need. Maybe I just need XYZ or XYY or delta E 2000 or just delta E's. So you can either export all or you can clear all and then check exactly which ones you want. Now, the important part to know is when you're exporting, it's only one page of the workflow at a time. We do have another option. This is even more kind of geeky, is we can dump the whole workflow data as a JSON file. Now, this is something one of our streaming providers requested because they wanted to be able to parse this. Essentially, it's a huge file of text of XML, and they want to be able to pull out just the sections they want, but they want everything in the workflow at the same time without having to do multiple steps. So in that case, you can right click on here on the name of the workflow and go to export all data to JSON, and it will dump every piece of measurement and configuration in the whole workflow to a JSON file. And then you can use a JSON parser or even write your own software to parse that data. Yeah. So that's another thing. I think that the JSON export is only in Ultimate, but I would have to, I need to check on that.
I've never heard of that file extension before, but I kind of like it.
Yeah, so it's pretty dense, but once you figure out where to look in that file, it's pretty powerful because you could set up something that pulls data out of those, and then you could just feed it more and more of those files, and it would know exactly what you wanted to extract. So that's kind of like how data exporting works. So one other thing is if we measure just the raw spectrum with the spectroradiometer, so if we switch to the Jetty right now, okay, it didn't connect to the Jetty, so let's connect to that again. Is it still on?
It's on now.
Okay, let's go search.
One great thing about the Jetty I like so much, you guys might notice that there's no cable coming off of it because it uses Bluetooth. So when you're fumbling around in the dark in a theater room or something, you don't have to worry about tripping over a cable, which I really like a lot.
But you still have the possibility that if the battery's dead or something, you can plug it in with micro USB and
totally,
connect over serial as well. So it's pretty flexible in that way. I think Photo Research was the first one to have Bluetooth, member on like the PR655.
Oh yeah,
you could get like the Bluetooth module, or maybe that was the 720 or something. But I remember that. Okay, so sync mode. I'm going to turn on the sync mode.
Do you want to talk about that for just a minute, Tyler, what the sync mode is all about?
So the measurement devices, some of them need to know what the refresh frequency of the panel is. Now, for example, LG OLEDs and anything using an LG OLED panel only have two native refresh modes, 100 hertz and 120. So if you're in America and you're feeding it 60, 24, or 30, then you're in 120 mode. If you're in Europe and you're feeding it 25 or 50, then it will be in 100 hertz mode. So I pretty much know, hey, we're feeding at 2398 or 60, so I'm gonna just enter 120, and that will set the frequency. Or you can do this initialize, and it will try to detect the frequency.
What's the major use case for doing this part of it?
What, the spectral power distribution?
No, the syncing that you just did.
Certain meters, they need to be most accurate. They need to essentially read data in the same cadence as the display is refreshing. So it's not trying to read in between things or non. It's kind of like a camera syncing up with 60 hertz lights. If it's set up to a wrong frequency, then you get like a flashing.
Sure.
Okay. So in the SDR toolkit workflow, we have the spectral power distribution layout where we can actually measure the spectrum of the display. So I'm going to hit read series now, since it should be set up.
While that's running, Tyler, John asks the initialize. I think he means in the sync mode that you just were in. He says the initialize doesn't work on the OLED. Why? Have you had problems with that not working on an OLED for some reason?
It depends on the device. I don't know if it's because of pulse width modulation or some other things, but I've just found that I personally know that the LG in North America will almost always be set to 120 hertz.
Right.
So we could definitely follow up with them on that. Certain meters like the K10 do not require it, whereas like the CR100 requires frequency syncing, but then the colorimetry research spectros do not. So it all depends on the meter itself.
Cool, good. And you guys will notice too, as Tyler's taking readings right now with the Jetty, not the Klein, you notice how much slower it is to take a reading for each color. And that's just the nature of the beast when you talk spectroradiometers and spectral devices, is that what you get in accuracy, you kind of trade off for in speed. And that's going back to what we talked about the first time with the whole reason of profiling.
Yeah, and the reason is because the spectroradiometer, the way it works is it has like a prism or diffraction grating, and it's splitting the light up into a whole bunch of different sensor sites instead of just like 3 in the K10. So there's much less photons going to each photo site in the spectroradiometer. So this is showing us, this is an interesting thing to show on why this new meter profiling method for LG OLEDs and anybody using LG OLED panels is necessary. So if we look at the spectrum of white, it looks like this. And this is most likely just the white subpixel, right? Now, if we go to the red one, you can see that this is actually more energy of red than what was in the white. And that's because it has a red filter over it. So this is the problem. Most displays are what we would call additive, and if we did this on, say, a LCD or something, if we took the spectrums of red, green, and blue and kind of overlaid them together, they would look like the white one. But in this case, this isn't true. Like if we look at the green is much more pointed than the green in the white one. Now, if we look at the red or the green one, you'll see that there is some other patches, or there's other data that's not pure green in here. And that's just because the panel is probably in 709 mode, and it's actually adding red and blue to desaturate the green in order to make the 709 color. But if we were in panel native mode, you probably wouldn't see these. So this is the main problem that this new Bodner meter profiling method is actually fixing. Because instead of treating the display as, hey, the spectrum of red, green, and blue equals white, it's treating it as there's 3 separate subgamuts, because the LG OLED panels only have, or they have 4 subpixels. They can only light up 3 at a time, and one has to be white. So only 2 of the colored subpixels are on at a time. So they kind of have 3 different combinations of those. So we have a different matrix to correct each one of those individually. Okay, so the next thing I wanted to show is a little bit of design mode. So this is a CalMAN Ultimate feature, and this is how we build workflows. So it's kind of a little bit wonky how it works, because it's really like written for engineers to have engineers use it, but it's getting more user-friendly by the day. So for example, if we let's go to the Grayscale 2-point page. So if we enable design mode, let's see if this works on over the go to webinar, is if you hit Alt D, which I hit, and okay, now we kind of see everything kind of changed. And now if I click on this and right click and go to uncheck this lock position thing, I can now drag it around the screen and put it wherever I want. So this is actually how the workflows are built. And if you have CalMAN Ultimate with design mode, you can either modify existing workflows, you can build your own from scratch, you can combine different elements from different workflows. It's a super powerful feature, and it's kind of a unique thing in the industry where it allows you to kind of build your own user interface. For example, like, hey, if I wanted to add a luminance chart to this, I could just click over here and add a luminance chart. Now, one thing to be aware of is once you place a chart, it has to get data from somewhere, and you have to tell it what type of data you want to feed into it. So typically then you right click on it, and then you go to properties, and then you have to tell it what kind of data is it. Is it grayscale data? And if it is, then it'll grab the grayscale data from this page. But if it's 3D color cube data, then you would have to select that. You can also change it into a bar graph here. I kind of showed a little bit of that. The chart style, you don't have to have design mode to change, but like where it's getting its data from and some of the other things, you do have to have design mode, and like the scaling and what the axes are labeled as and stuff like that. You can add text fields. You can import your own graphics to put, say I was at a display manufacturer and I wanted to make my own internal QC workflow. Well, I could put my own branding in it. I could put instructions for the technicians to use, very specific ones that are like, okay, open this, connect this button, do X, Y, and Z. You can even have it, like you could even have a graphic that was a QR code that could go to something in your inventory, and somebody would do something after each step. Also, you can add your own pass-fail indicators. So this is something that is very popular in those kind of technician use cases where the user of CalMAN is not going to be the CalMAN expert. you could have pass-fail lights based on different parameters. So if I right-click on this and go to properties, you can edit pass-fail conditions. So you could say, okay, grayscale, and I could say, I want to have, sorry, I'm trying to find the Delta E2000 thing. Okay, I could have Delta E2000 over or under a certain threshold, and then it would flip that between pass or fail. So I could set thresholds in my workflow that if my Delta E's were under a certain point for that, then it would go green. If not, it would go red. And that would be like an indicator that, hey, this isn't acceptable or this didn't pass our testing. Mm-hmm. So it's super flexible. And this allows CalMAN to just kind of be your own tool for taking measurements or validating stuff or doing interesting measurement things. Cool. You can also display spectrum. You can actually embed things like DDC controls. Like say you personally did a ton of LG OLEDs or Samsung TVs and you wanted to enhance what our AutoCal workflow is, you could actually embed some of the DDC controls for like the 20-point white balance in the workflow page. And so you don't have to go up to the DDC menu here and go into there. You could actually embed it into the page. So if I go to properties here, even though we're not connected to a display right now, it'll still, it will still allow me to show, like, normally on the DDC menu, there is several pages that you can cycle through. One would be the RGB balance, one would be gamut adjustments, one would be regular display controls like brightness and contrast, and then some would be the 3D LUT controls where you can like reset the 3D LUT or manually tweak the values in the LUT. So this design mode thing is just super flexible, and once people start to see what the possibilities are, because it's such a like drag and drop experience, it doesn't take like a lot of, you don't need to like know programming to do it. Now, you can do some pretty crazy advanced stuff, including we have this concept of pre and post actions. So on a workflow page, you can right click when you're in design mode and go to properties. And whoops. Hold on, let me change. So we have this concept of pre and post actions where we can have something automatically happen based on just arriving at the page or leaving the page. And a lot of the advanced kind of automatic stuff we do, and especially the home workflows, where we set things automatically for people so they don't have to, like they have a VideoForge Pro and they arrive at this page to calibrate HDR, we turn on HDR automatically.
Oh, nice.
Stuff like that. That is all done with these pre and post actions. So a pre-action would be, as I arrive at this page, do this. Mm-hmm. Post action would be, when I'm leaving this page, do this. So if I edited the action, a pre-action could be anything from changing the gamma formula target, so then the next page is set to a different gamma formula. You can do if statements or else. Those are a little bit more like programmer logic stuff. And if there's any commands that you're trying to do and you're unsure of what that command would be, please reach out to us, or you can reach out to Jason. He can pass it on and get us involved. Because there's a lot of stuff that is not very documented because maybe one user requested it.
Oh, sure.
It was very specific. But a lot of the times people will like, hey, I would like this feature request. And we're like, oh yeah, it already does that. Here's how to do it.
Oh,
so
nice.
If you have any kind of like pie in the sky, I would love CalMAN to be able to do this. Please reach out, and it might already do that, or we might have a way that you could do that already. And if not, we could get it on our feature request list and kind of get it slotted in for development.
Tyler, do you see in this situation specifically, So maybe I'm a very experienced calibrator and I've done lots and lots of displays, and I don't necessarily need the hand holding, if you will, in the workflows. I can make my own workflow here in design mode. Maybe it's 1 or 2 pages that has everything I need.
Yeah, and I think especially if you do this, like say you do a certain brand projector for HDR all the time, and you know I have to jump around between 2 different workflows, or I only use 2 steps in this workflow or something. One interesting thing is, like I said, you can take pages out of one workflow and bring it into another, or take pages out of several different workflows and import them into a brand new workflow. And the way this works is in the tree view or table of contents menu. If I wanted to add a new category, which is one of these where it says analysis, I could click that. If I wanted to add a blank layout, I could click this, and it would essentially add a blank workflow page for me.
Nice.
Now, if I wanted to take, let's say, this saturation sweep page, and I like how this page is laid out, and I want to put it in my workflow. If I right-click on it, I can say export layout, and it will write this layout, and this is our extension for layouts, out, and then you could open your new workflow that you're working on, and you could right-click on another one of these and say import layout and select that, and it will bring it in. Now, it will bring it to the bottom, and to move it, you right-click and you would just say move up or down, and it can get a little tedious. I have a request in to be able to just like use the arrow keys, but we have this move up and down concept. So it allows you to kind of take parts of one workflow and bring it into another. Because, for example, like that saturation sweep page, you can see there's a lot of objects, and each one of these had to be sized and make sure that it's the same size as the ones next to it, and it's a pretty tedious process. So if there's already one that is close to what you're looking for, it's better to just start from one that's already somebody did all the tedious work and just modify it to your own use. Like,
sure.
Oh, if I don't care about these, right, I could just right-click on them, go to lock. So once you unlock the position, you can, it's kind of behind, because it's a little tricky, it's behind you can just hit this and now it's gone. And so you could just, say you wanted a different chart here, you could remove these 3 and bring in a different chart and put it there. And then you could save the layout or export it into another one. And we also have this concept of gamut override. Now, currently this isn't a user accessible field, or actually it is. So you can turn it on and off, but you can't add it to another page. And this allows each page in a workflow to have its own color space, gamma, and white point target. So if you have questions about that and you would like to do that, reach out or post in the Facebook group, and I'll show some more detailed stuff in there. But I think that would take a little bit longer than we would like in this tutorial for a very specific feature. I think we've covered a lot of stuff. I think the next webinar will be, I think we want to do an CalMAN 2020 webinar in the next week or 2, maybe even 3 weeks from now, covering some of the new features in there. But I'd like to talk about a little bit of it. We talked about the Bodner method, meter profiling. That I think is going to be a big deal for a lot of people, especially in our Hollywood and post-production and high-end home theaters that are, want the best calibration possible, is having this new meter profiling, because certain parts of the gamut would especially like red, the existing 4-color matrix method meter profiling would always leave the luminance of red down by like 2 or 3%, up to 3%, and that is a pretty large error on red. So this should really help out with that.
And that'll be part of 2020, right?
Yep. And let's bring up the Portrait.com so we can show people exactly where they can go sign up to be part of the beta program. So if you just go to Portrait.com and then scroll down to the footer of the page, let me see if I can do this. there's this link called CalMAN beta program down here. And if you click on it, it will launch the page that we were already on. And you just enter. Now you do have to have a current license. So it's not like it's a free beta for people to just test out the software. But if you already have a CalMAN license, then you will get early access to the 2020 beta. And we'd love your feedback, especially some of the professional users, because their feedback, they kind of work on the most displays, whereas somebody running CalMAN Home is usually only working on one display.
Sure. Yeah.
And if you're concerned about running it on your production machine because you have jobs to do, reach out to us and maybe we can get you like a 2-week temporary license, an additional one, just so you could install it on a separate machine or something if you're worried about that.
The question came in, Tyler, and this might be answered with CalMAN 2020. You tell me. He says, when will CalMAN be available to handle the new Asus ProArt 32U? And it looks like there's a model number there. Are you familiar with that display?
Yes. So that is in CalMAN 2020.
Perfect.
Beta.
Awesome. Awesome. Have you already gotten some of the newer 2020 models? Have you already gotten your hands on some of them?
Yes. So also included in the beta will be support for the 2020 LG and Panasonic TVs.
Nice.
Some of the Sony ones should just already work because of the way how they have their CalMAN for Bravia app that is kind of like the interface that we talk to. So the API never changes, and the TVs should just work.
Nice.
And then I think we're going to be releasing Samsung in the next version, which should actually is going to come sooner than we did last year. So it'll be the second version, which would be R2, will be coming sooner than we did last year. So should be pretty quickly after R1.
Good. Excellent.
So
I don't see any other questions at the moment. If you guys have some, feel free to shoot them over.
One thing is, as part of the beta program, I did make a tutorial video that will be shared with the beta testers on how the Bodner method meter profiling works, and also one on the i1 Display Pro. We added new intelligent meter averaging. Because one of the problems is the way it was implemented in CalMAN is we had fixed exposure times. So you could say, I want an exposure time of 1 second, and it would do that for a bright patch and a dark patch. And for the bright patch, it was kind of overkill, and maybe on the dark patch, it wasn't enough. So we actually added this intelligent averaging, and you can pick between 3, 5, and 8 measurements where, if we get kind of a noisy reading, especially dark colors, dark blue colors, we can average those out and get better results, especially with consumers on OLED televisions.
I see there's a brand new X-Rite i1 Display 3. I've actually got one here somewhere, but
wait, are you talking about the i1 Pro 3?
I'm sorry, i1 Pro 3. I'm sorry, yeah.
So both the i1 Pro 3 and the i1 Display Pro Plus will be supported in CalMAN 2020 as well.
Excellent. Fabio asks, I'm not sure what this is, so maybe Tyler, you got some insight here. Will you add the AIO mode? I'm not sure what that means, Fabio.
So that is for the meter syncing. So that's going to be in CalMAN 2020 R2, but the meter averaging one, which I did pretty extensive testing, actually is what is causing, or is what is enabling much better results on OLED televisions doing 3D LUTs, is the meter averaging and not the sync mode. But that we will have that added, but it slipped down the priority list.
Sure. There was another question I know that somebody had actually mentioned. I'm gonna grab the mouse from you here real quick.
Okay.
I'll just show everybody. If you go to Facebook, and we've got the CalMAN users group right here. Somebody had asked a question last night. Let's take a look at that question. Mark says, what about volumetric meter profile for better results on WOLED? Any news regarding that direction?
That is what the Bodner method, that is official one that LG came up with. Now, other softwares came up with their own way to mitigate the meter profiling problem, but this is the one that LG actually came up with themselves, and that's the one we've implemented, which is the Bodmer method, which uses multiple matrices instead of a volumetric 3D LUT-based approach.
And Stefan's question, discuss the different CMFs in CalMAN and the practical use in calibration. I'm not familiar with CMF. What's that?
So that is color matching function. So if we want to go back to CalMAN, you can use alternative ones, but it's more of a super advanced user one. So if we go here and go to application preference or measurement options. So the way we work with spectroradiometers is that they don't send us XYZ data, which is what a colorimeter sends us, or sends CalMAN. I don't mean like it doesn't send to us. CalMAN requests data from the spectroradiometer. It does not receive XYZ. We ask for the spectrum, and we perform what we call a color matching function on the data to get the XYZ data. So the default one that is kind of the industry standard is called CIE 1931 2-degree observer, which is right here. But we do have alternative color matching functions.
Oh, okay, good. So, but that's the default one. The standard one is the default one.
You have to be very careful about this because a lot of calibration targets like D65 in like people know the coordinates using the 1931 color matching function. Like if you use a different color matching function, it's not 3127329 anymore. It's something else.
Right.
So you kind of have to understand the color science behind that to know exactly what you're doing. That's why I say it's a kind of an advanced feature.
Sure.
One thing is like even the latest one we have in here, and I've actually tested the CIE 2015 to see if it was going to be like a panacea cure for metameric failure, where we'd have different display technologies that look different. And even though I use the latest color matching function with a CR300 2-nanometer spectro, I calibrated 3 different monitors. One was CCFL based, one was white LED, one was PFS phosphor LED, and they still all look different, even though the CR300 using this color matching function or CIE 2015, they still look different. So I still don't think that just another color matching function, it does make an improvement, but it's not like something that if you just use this, they'll look perfect to everybody and all technologies will look the same. I don't think we're there yet for color matching functions.
John asks, with all the picture modes to calibrate on an LG OLED, will we ever get a feature to enable creating a 3D lookup table and then loading it into multiple picture menu slots? Excellent question, John.
That is something that's on the roadmap, is re-importing of that and also 1D LUTs.
Right. So the idea is there, just in case anybody needs some clarity, like let's say you calibrate ISF dark mode and you run a 3D lookup table for that mode, but you also want to calibrate a game mode. Rather than redoing the game mode 3D lookup table all over, you can just bring in the 3D lookup table you made on the dark mode. That would save a lot of time for the calibrators.
You can currently use the it's called retargeting. Yeah. So over here, if you let me connect to the cube generator to just show the example of this.
Follow-up question to that, Tyler. Do you think that'll be this year?
I'm hoping, personally.
Hoping. Good. 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 Now this is actually something where you're at right now. I haven't really dabbled in this too much. This will be cool to see.
So when we create a 3D LUT, before we even calculate the 3D LUT, we write all the measurement data to disk in a profile file, and it's stored in the LUT folder, and the file extension is CPFX, and that stores all the measurement data that we use to calculate the 3D LUT. Well, if you want to say you want to do a second mode on the same display with the same data but target a different color space, you could do that here, because if we say retarget LUT from profile on this button when you're connected to the TV, and it will open the LUT folder and it will show you these profiles. So this one was from 320. So maybe this was one of your, maybe this was your C8 or something.
Yeah, it could have been.
And if I say open, it will now let me retarget. Now, the important part to know is you have to set what new targets you want in here. And obviously, since I'm using the cube generator and not, say, an LG TV, it's asking me what format the LUT is in. But on the LG TV, this would already be pre-selected for you. One thing you can't do is go from video levels to full range. Like, so you're kind of stuck with that right now. But you can do that. But we have plans to be able to import the 1D and 3D LUTs back into the TV.
Yeah, I find myself with, especially people with like an LG OLED, you know, you calibrate a day mode, a night mode, the game mode, you know, it's like the Technicolor mode sometimes even. So I can totally see where John's coming from. Rather than calibrate that TV 4 times, that would be super helpful. That's cool.
Especially like with HDR, because you could totally use the same 1D LUT for Dolby Vision and HDR10.
True.
The panels both at peak brightness and the behavior should be almost identical.
And John says filmmaker mode also. Yeah, that's coming too. That's in the CXs, right? As far as LG goes, CX and going forward.
The support for that will be in the beta. So sign up.
Oh, good.
Sign up.
Good. Yeah, guys, sign up for that beta. It's already going to be there. It is an imminent date that we will we'll see that beta launch. I think we're getting down to the wire of that seeing that being launched. That's really exciting. Excellent. Well, guys, I don't know, Tyler, if you want to show anything else, we're coming right about on our hour now. If you want to show anybody any other tricks or anything that might just take a couple minutes here, and you guys feel free to keep those questions rolling in.
One thing I like, history tabs, these are very powerful. Let me go out of design mode. So say I wanted to use, say I wanted to take these measurements with like 5 different settings on the TV. Well, I can duplicate this by adding extra history tabs, and then you can rename. I highly recommend renaming them.
Yes, same here.
Also, is if you are building your workflow, and say your workflow is designed to do something like measure different modes on the TV, well, you can set up a page, workflow page, that already has the history tabs filled out here, like say 5 of them, and already named certain things with no data in them, and that can actually be saved into the workflow itself. So next time you open that workflow, or every time you open that workflow, those history tabs will already be added and renamed to exactly what you would like.
Good.
One thing to note that when you export data, each tab is its own data set. Because we're kind of duplicating the data for the whole page, and we want to actually have, or the way it behaves is it kind of treats it as its own kind of entity. So if you do export data, you have to do each individual tab, and that's kind of where that JSON export, where it dumps everything at once, comes into play.
Tyler, if you have multiple tabs open, and let's say you're doing like a pre-cal reading or a post-cal reading, and you have multiple tabs open, in my experience, and maybe this is still the same, the first tab is what's going to end up on the report. Is that still true?
Yes.
Okay, good. Excellent. Fabio says, any date for the beta? Soon?
Yes, let's say very soon.
I know you guys have been working on it like nonstop.
Yep.
Yes, just keep your eyes peeled on that, and I'm sure it'll be announced. You know, I'm sure on the social medias and on the website and things like that as well. So
and we'll definitely, you know, if you're in the beta program, right when it launches, you'll receive an email with instructions and where to download and links to those videos I mentioned that I shot, and everything that's new and what you should be looking at. And one thing I wanted to cover that's pretty important is we're kind of slowly getting everything shifted from SpectraCal to Portrait. Right. So now CalMAN will be installed in a Portrait Displays folder, not SpectraCal.
Not the SpectraCal folder.
You do need to uninstall CalMAN. You cannot do an upgrade. You need to uninstall your current one. And if you have any custom workflows or reports, you're going to need to, you know, move those out of your workflows folders install the new version, and then move those back into the workflows and reports folders. So that's a very important thing. And we'll probably put it in big red letters in the email to make sure you don't just, because it's a big change, but
sure,
long overdue.
I think I think that the laptop that I have right now that you're working on actually is a new laptop to me. So my old laptop still has my old profiles and all those things. So at some point I've got to copy that folder onto a thumb drive or something and bring it over to this computer so I can have all my profiles back. Right now, if you look at my profiles folder, there's probably only 3 or 4, whereas before I had at least 15, 20 different profiles.
Yeah, and if you have any problem with that, please reach out to us or post in the Facebook group, and I'll tell you, because it depends on what kind of meter you have. So if you have an i1 Display Pro or a C6, it's written, the profile file in the profiles folder is actually the serial number of the device. If you have a serial basis like colorimeter, like a Klein or a colorimetry research, then it's actually tied to what COM port it was connected to. And on your new machine, it could be a different COM port. So you would just need to take that old profile file, rename it so it's COM6 instead of COM8, and then it will all show up on the new machine.
Good.
If you need help with that, please reach out.
That's Steve actually in the chat. He actually just asked that same exact question. What about meter profiles? So Steve, I hope that answered that. I had the same question myself, so I'm glad you asked. Really good, really good. Well, guys, we got a couple more minutes left. If you have any maybe last minute questions here, go ahead and get those questions in, and if not, we'll let you guys loose for the day. I think it was a great session, Tyler. I learned a couple things myself. I've known about the design mode, but I haven't really dabbled with it all that much. Just specifically, I'll give you guys an example. On the ISF workflow, on the adjust luminance page, that's always in foot lamberts because the description next to the reading tells you for this room, aim for this many foot lamberts, for this kind of room, this many foot lamberts. So I went into design mode and changed that over to nits just because we're all using nits now. So just little changes like that are super, super easy to do. I think actually Chris with Portrait Display is up there with you in Seattle. He actually showed me that little trick, so that was really helpful. John says, can you tell us any of the new CalMAN 2020 features, like anything that's brand new?
It will be in the beta email.
Okay. There's probably, I'm sure, a list of things, right?
Yeah. Well, there's some stuff that isn't announced yet and stuff, so I want it to be a little bit of a surprise. You don't want it to be like Apple Keynote where you've seen everything already.
Right, exactly. No, that's good. Fabio says, did CalMAN 20? I'm sorry. Did CalMAN 2020 offer new workflows or at least updated versions of the workflows? So, are there any brand new workflows or updates or?
There's new workflows and some have been updated, but we did a huge update in CalMAN 2020 R2 where we pretty much replaced every workflow. So
good.
There's some under the hood stuff. There's some preparations for other things that are going to be happening in the future. So there's also new hardware support. But if you guys have any requests and like, hey, a workflow that could do this, let us know and share it now. Most of our new features come from user feedback. So
good. I'm glad you just mentioned hardware because it just reminded me that the brand new Meridio 7G will be supported. That's gonna be sweet. I know you've played with that generator a lot. I've got one here. I've been playing with it a lot. Very, very excited to get that in a calibrator's hands and see it out in the wild, man. It's a very, very powerful machine.
Yep, and it has some cool demo content on it.
It sure does. What's really cool about that, guys, if you have a display that can do 120 frames per second, there are some 120 video clips on that generator. Tyler and I were actually thinking about showing you guys some of those test patterns or test images here today, but unfortunately the frame rate of this program we use for the webinar is a lot lower than 120. So even if we tried to show you on the display back here or the C8 even, it still doesn't look smooth.
It looks worse than if it was like just 24p video.
It kind of does. Yeah, it kind of does. So, but you guys will be able to see that in its full glory. The 120 is a cool thing. I'm really excited to see that for sports. We've got a couple movies that are 60 already, so seeing some things at 120 are going to be super cool. The one test image I always go back to on that, Tyler, is the one where there's some vehicles driving by a street, and on like a van and maybe a truck, there's some writing, and they're driving by pretty fast. But at that high frame rate, you can totally read the text that's on the side of the van and on the side of the truck, because that frame rate's so high. So I'm really excited to see some more and more content in the high frame rate.
Yep.
Well, cool, guys. If you have any last minute questions, go ahead and get those in. With that being said, as I wait for those last couple questions to come in, thank you so much, Tyler. I think we'll reconvene probably the next couple of weeks once 2020 is out, and maybe go through some things and show the folks some new tricks in 2020. Sound good?
Sure, sounds great.
Cool. Awesome, guys. Well, I don't see any new questions coming in. So with that being said, I will go ahead and cut you loose for the day. Thank you so much for hanging out. If you think that any colleagues that you may have will benefit from this video, we will get it uploaded to YouTube here in the next couple of days. Feel free to reach out to myself or Tyler if you have any specific questions. That CalMAN Facebook group, guys, is a great place to be, because if you reach out to me or Tyler and we're real busy or something, we can't get back to you for a couple hours or a day or something, somebody in that CalMAN group will probably be able to at least help you a little bit with your questions. So feel free to join that group. I saw a couple come in already while we were on this webinar today. So as we jump off here, I'll go ahead and approve you guys. So thank you so much for doing that. Thanks for hanging out, and stay tuned for some more webinars, and especially the 2020 CalMAN webinar. Again, we'll probably do that in the next maybe 2 weeks or so. So thanks again, guys. I don't see any other questions coming in, so we'll see you on the next one. Tyler, enjoy your day out there, and yeah, we'll see you later.
Okay, bye. Thanks
Cool.
a lot.
Bye, guys.